All right, that's President Barack Obama right outside the White House. A couple of comments here. We have about 5 minutes left in this segment, so let's get right back to Neil McCabe. Neil, some of the things that we heard here that are certain takeaways right away. I guess the U.S. is not going to involve in a military action without assurances from Iraq. The president talks about the government as well, making sure the Iraqi government is behind them. Why do I keep thinking we've heard these words before and they rarely make a dent in the final decision?
Well, first of all, let me just say that this guy is absolutely bonkers and over his head. To say that an army marching on Baghdad is not behaving in a conducive way to long-term security is just, I don't even know what he's talking about. This is a president who just celebrated a fair and free election in Iraq. I mean, Iraq is a democracy. This is an outside army, an outside militia that was gaining strength as the Sunnis were making their war against Assad just over the border, and they are now standing up to this is a military army taking control of Iraq. This is not from political unrest or sectarian violence. This is an attempt to take over a country. It's a coup. To your point, McCabe was ridiculed in 2008 when he said that he could foresee American forces being in Iraq for 100 years. So maybe not 100 years, but certainly we've been in Japan for 70 years. We've been in Germany. We've been in the South for over 100 years. I mean, there's something to be said for an American presence. When I was in Iraq, I made two trips, one in 2009 to 2010, and then again in 2011. When I was there in 2011, there were no firefights. We were opening schools. We were opening crime labs. Iraq was on the glide path to being a stable democracy. We should have been there to support them.
Okay, now here's the next thing. I'm going to work off you having taken 2 trips to Iraq, and this is what a lot of Americans really want to focus on here. The president said, and he mentioned, those who are not willing to stand and defend their posts. And that's what a lot of Americans believe. You certainly were there on the ground, but they're seeing the security forces running, getting away as quickly as they can, dropping their weapons, dropping their uniforms, and simply leaving. So the American public is asking themselves, why should we even consider a limited help to people who simply don't want to help themselves?
I don't think it's helpful that President Obama is calling the Iraqi soldiers cowards. And among soldiers, that's a very difficult thing to throw around. Certainly there's
the word coward, to be fair here.
He did, but he painted that picture. There's nothing written about the Iraqi army that wasn't written in 1951 and 1950 about the South Koreans. They needed help. I saw the Iraqi army during an exercise in 2011. They were well equipped. They were motivated. They were disciplined. Over and over again, as a combat historian, I talked to American soldiers who told me point blank that the Iraqi soldiers were fantastic soldiers and they were proud to serve with them. This wasn't something that people are making up. And so, 4 years later, 3 years later, after we abandoned them, is it surprising that people might turn and run? A lot of times when people turn and run, it's a failure of leadership. Did they run out of ammunition? Are they just trying to save their lives? I mean, I'm just very, very uncomfortable with any judgments on the Iraq, basically blaming the Iraqi army and blaming the Iraqi soldiers who are put in an absolutely impossible situation by this president. This president abandoned them. They wanted our help. They wanted our training. We should have been there.
Okay, I got 30 seconds left. Is there any reason for anybody to think, as the president said in his words, work with the Iraqi government, that there is a stable government there to work with, and then that can actually get something done?
I just don't know where we go from here. Certainly, quick action to stabilize the government that we have now is the best course of action.
But how long would that take to stabilize this government, and haven't we been trying to do that now for some time?
Well, I mean, things were stable 2-3 years ago, and, unfortunately, what is the cost of doing nothing? The cost of doing nothing is what?
The cost of doing nothing is nothing at the end of the day. Well, the cost is very high, of course, I understand, but it eventually leads to nothing. You are exactly right.
Look at the map of where Iraq is. Right next to Syria, a stone's throw from Israel. They've got borders in Saudi Arabia. They've got borders with Turkey. I'm not convinced we could just stand by and watch.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Neil, thank you so much for being with us. We'll definitely do it again. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now your turn. We'll get your opinions as we go through the day. We have a lot more to talk about as Midpoint continues, where we question everything.